Awesome. I'm George. I'm a developer support engineer here at Eighth Wall. I've got a pretty large background in game development, and I'm really excited to see what everyone creates.
Hi, I'm Declan. Like Pablo said, I'm a member of the community. I've been working in Eighth Wall for about 4.5 years now and started working in studio almost full time about a year ago. So I just love building projects and have tried to learn a lot of like the best practices of building in studio. And I'm super excited to participate in this game jam myself.
And yeah, hello everybody. My name is James C. Kane. I'm the creator in residence at VIVERSE. VIVERSE is a platform for publishing and distributing 3D content on the web, whether that's gaming or infographics or configurators for e-commerce. We're adding more and more engines that can publish to VIVERSE, including this kind of early experiment in Game Jam with Niantic Studio. So what you build in Niantic Studio will be offering to publish and give you a creator contract with VIVERSE, so you'll be able to distribute and get your work in front of even more people there. I personally, I've directed some of the most popular WebXR games to date, including the Webby winning Escape Artist. And my most recent Intier role was produced in partnership with VIVERSE. So I just went through the creative program and really enjoyed it and really have found a cool community there. And looking forward to see what you all do here. I'm going to talk a little bit about do's and don'ts for game jams here in just a bit.
Well, I guess I can introduce myself. I'm Andronic. I'm the head of growth at ViveVerse, and yeah, I run a lot of the marketing activations. And yeah, I also have a huge background in game dev.
Thanks, Andronic. Didn't notice you joined. Good to see you. All right, James, the floor is yours.
Thanks everybody. I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts for what makes a successful game jam project. It's a little different than scoping like a long-term or more productized game. I'm going to talk about how to make a cool game, have fun, learn a thing or two doing it. So kind of first tip here, number 1A is scoping. And I recommend you do a smaller scope project that you can reasonably complete in the time you have. I've done many hackathons over the years, and a simple project that's really well executed, meaning good mechanics and bug-free, that will be rewarded much more often than a brilliant but huge concept that you couldn't quite complete or that is going to crash for many players. You can have stretch goals and things you want to accomplish, but work on those last and really just cut them when you're near the finish line, if in favor of like a complete core game loop. That's the key thing. So next slide, you can see, I would suggest 1B is if your scope or idea slightly exceeds what you can do on your own, partner up and find other creators whose skills and work style complement your own. So if you're an auteur and you can do it all, that's great. You still want to probably scope to a one-person budget in that case. But anyway, most of us aren't masters of all domains, and a team with a dev, an artist, or a designer/PM can often work wonders. I would also say writers and musicians love being involved in game dev work, so reach out to anyone you know with those skills. Next slide, I want to talk about steering toward cross-platform design. Next slide, still seeing partner up personally. There we go. A few videos here, but if you're, okay, yeah, so basically target cross-platform. I think for this particular game jam, we're really focused on desktop and mobile. If you want to make a really unique mobile-only or desktop-only experience, that's your prerogative. But just think about how many more users you can reach if your concept works on both platforms. For any feature you want to add, maybe question, how does it work on both touch controls and keyboard and mouse? And do your camera views and UI work in mobile portrait mode or horizon mode, things like that. So this competition, I will also say, is not focused on VR, like we said, or XR maybe broadly. But maybe a future update to your game can add that support if you've really got that like cross-platform winner. So that's still an area I design for and care about. And you can see this is my game on VIVERSE, where it runs in all three of those platforms, desktop, mobile, and VR. So bonus hint here, in the film industry, your intro UX it's called the establishing shot. And it's basically, what is the first thing the user sees when they load your game? It immediately sets the tone and tells them so much about what to expect and what the user's goals are and next steps and things. People are extremely impatient and will bounce out of your game if you're not making it extremely clear what they should be doing immediately. Make it load fast, make the entry and overall UX very simple. Next slide can talk about first polish. Because you've scoped your project appropriately, you haven't gone way overboard, you've made something you can complete reasonably, you can use any extra time to just make it look and feel amazing. Animations, particles, sound effects, voiceover, UI, whatever you can do to like heighten immersion and make the user feel compelled and kind of convey a sense of high quality design and product. In plenty of hackathons I've seen, the winner, their concept was solid, but what really put them over the top was the extra time polishing the interactions and design elements and making that stuff look and feel great. So that always pays off. The other thing I would call out is probably pacing. Like, ask yourself at every moment, what am I asking the user to do right now that they will find genuinely rewarding? Make stuff happen and don't make me wait around. Don't make me walk around long empty spaces necessarily. Shorten that hallway or boost the speed. Always be giving the user something interesting to do at each step. Next slide, we can talk about some actual low-hanging fruit here, I would say. Sound effects and music. Don't necessarily need the audio there, but yeah, sound effects and music is such a low effort, high reward area to focus on for your game dev. It can make everything more naturally rewarding and engaging with actually almost no performance cost. Usually when you want to do something really cool in game dev, you got to worry about whether you can run it on a mobile processor. Sound is generally quite cheap to run. So this is, again, low effort, high reward. You do want to watch your licensing. You want to make sure you have the rights to use everything you use. But freesound.org is a great resource I use on basically every project. And again, like sound designers and musicians love to be enlisted in game dev stuff, I've found. So reach out to your partners. And then last thing I want to talk about is just follow your gut and have fun. I think you need to, yeah, if you click play there, oops, I didn't get the thing. Latch on to something that feels compelling to you personally and don't try to reverse engineer from trends or super popular genres right now. This is To the Limbs by Peter Adams. It's a Webby winning project on VIVERSE. No one would have ever created this by looking purely at demographics and trends. It's an expression of who the creator is, and now he has a Webby Award and is quite renowned for it. So to what extent does your work reflect you, and how can you bring yourself to the project, I think is always something to try for. And yeah, if you can have fun, learn something, and build a complete concept, that's a total success, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So yeah, we'll come back for any questions maybe, or I don't know if we want to go straight into the next part, but that's my piece.
Yeah, before we jump into the next element, I know maybe some questions will be fresh in your minds for James directly. So if anyone has any questions for James, you can raise your hand now or drop them in the Q&A. Don't see anyone. All right, cool. Then I guess we will save it for the end, and we'll go on to our next slides. All right, George and Declan, you're up.
All right. I forgot. Is this one me or Declan?
No, I
Declan.
got this one.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, scope is a huge thing, like James talked about. In a game jam that I participated on in studio recently, I built a rage platformer, kind of like Jump King. And one of the things that I really like to do is prototype out a bunch of different elements of a game before I actually start working on it. So on the left and center, you can kind of see my dev environment for this game that I was building, where I added in bouncy platforms as well as wind, just to try out the mechanics of the game. And then actually the right side is the final game. And the only elements that made it into the game were regular platforms and the icy platforms, which are the light blue and then the dark green in this little test environment. And um, I kind of felt like it was better to take time and again add in some polish than it was to just cram in some more elements. So I spent a lot more time working on the actual level design, um, trying out a bunch of the jumps to make sure that they were possible, and then thinking about like the path and strategy of the game itself. Then I did about adding in just more types of platforms that you can land on. So when it comes down to it, like James said, it's a lot better to have a tight scope and maybe try out elements, but not necessarily add them in, just to see if it will like make your game overall better or if it will just make it more complicated. And when you prototype things, if you're going to eventually add in like a full game later after the game jam, then you can still use those. So if I wanted to, I could still, add in bouncy platforms and stuff. And that's not like crazy, but in a game jam, you're really wanting a minimum viable product or a vertical slice of like what the game could be. It doesn't necessarily have to be the full game itself. So you don't have to include every single element that you think is cool. You can just include the things that really are going to make the game unique and make it yeah, just your submission. Yes, Pablo, it is a very frustrating game. It was a fun one though. So next slide for sure. I don't think
So,
anybody's beat that game yet, actually. Just
dude, that game is so hard. So I'm going to talk about cross-platform design. So this is something that's important to take note of when you're developing your games. If you plan on supporting like mobile or desktop and mobile, um, and yeah, so this is just some like important stuff to not forget. Is like if you plan on having people use your game on the phone and you've only tested on the computer, keep in mind like phones don't have keyboards, so you're gonna have to come up with some like joystick or something like that, or like even use like the gyroscope on the phone. And then keep in mind like desktop usually has a stable connection. It's usually wired. Whereas like mobile, who knows? Somebody might be in the forest playing your game. Um, and you never really know. So it's always important to optimize your experience, your models and textures and everything to accommodate for the people with like the lowest level of connection. And then I think we have one more. Yeah. So yeah, UX is important. This is UX stands for like user experience. Um, and UX is really important because it's not only what sets your game apart, but how your game presents itself to the audience. Um, you can think about it like um, when you think of the game like Super Hot, for example, right? You think of like red and white. You think of like slow motion, right? You have all these things that build up to the user experience of playing the game. You feel like Neo from the Matrix. All of these things culminate into the user experience. And so here on this slide, this is just a demo of like how you can build that user experience simply by changing the way that the splash screen looks, right? So on the left, we've got the default splash screen from the sample project, which you can see the link down below. And then Declan took that and customized it for his game, and you can see that on the right-hand side.
Just to add something about this also really has to do with what James was talking about with the first thing that your player sees whenever they start the game. So if you've used Eighth Wall in the past with the legacy editor and are now transitioning into Studio for the first time, you'll notice that there is no default splash screen really. So the first thing you'll typically see whenever you launch a Studio project without adding in some sort of splash screen is you'll see the assets kind of like flash on and things will slowly build themselves. So George built out this splash screen sample project, and it's one of my favorite sample projects that I include in every single project that I do. Behind the hood of what's happening on this scrolling clouds one, it's using the sample project to figure out how to load in the assets, and then it's using the events and stuff that George had already designed in the sample or the splash screen project to then change the assets on the scrolling cloud game that I made. So I kind of this is just a sample of what you can do with some of the new UI tools that's built into Studio. So it's not like a real game, but I actually use the same loading screen on my video that I just made. I made a game that's an image target tracked duck hunt style game where you're shooting fruit through a portal that's attached to an image target. And yeah, I used this same loading screen for that just to kind of give people a little bit of a hint of like they'll be looking in the sky and seeing clouds and there's a lot of movement and stuff. So yeah, you want to really make sure you're giving somebody a really good visual representation of what is going to be coming in the game, but as well, you want to make sure that they understand that you're loading an experience here. It's not like jumping straight into it. You need to make sure that you're telling them that there is something going on in the background, that you are actually loading and that they're not just frozen. Because if there's nothing happening, then a lot of the times people will think that, their experience locked up before it ever started. So just having some of that stuff really conveys to users that their experience will begin when it is ready. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. So pacing is something else that's really, really important in a game. I play a lot of tabletop role-playing games, and in any style of a video game or role-playing game, or even board game, it's very, very easy for people to get bored when they're in an experience. I've played Dungeons and Dragons sessions where it takes an hour and a half for us to get around the entire table back to my turn at the end, and that's a huge pacing issue. So this game right here called Lost in the Woods, it was a submission for one of our past game jams that we had in the community. The first version of the game was one that they submitted for the game jam, and it didn't really have like a ton of objectives going on. You kind of just were dropped into a world, were told to find the party at the end of the world, and there was not a lot of like hinting at the objective of what was going on. And then as well, like something else with the game was you could only move at one pace. So you were kind of like walking around everywhere and it kind of felt like a little bit of a slog at times. Like it was a really good submission and I enjoyed it and the design of it was awesome, but the controlling and movement behind the game was a little bit slow. So when they revamped the version, I believe it was for the Developer Accelerator Fund, they were able to take some of the mechanics that they had already built, but that improved the pacing. So they added in a balloon scavenger hunt along the way. So instead of just trying to find somebody at the end of a maze, you had objectives along the way, and that made it more fun to get to the end goal. As well, they increased the move speed of the character, so you weren't just kind of like slowly walking around anywhere. You were moving a lot quicker, and it was a lot easier to get from one objective to the other. It didn't feel like a walking simulator anymore. It felt more like a video game. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the improved mechanics that they added in. So improved speed. They added in a better camera view and like camera functionality, and then they had the clear objective. So there's also always things that you can do to improve the game after you have finished like a version of it. So adding more difficulties, doing time trials to get people to play more often, maybe adding in a scoreboard to see how quickly you were able to beat the level the first time versus the most recent time, and have like speed running sessions on the game. So there's always more design that you can do, but definitely you want to make sure that one of your main focuses while you're building out a game jam game is to make sure that it is quick, you get to the point, and people are experiencing the mechanics of the game that you want them to experience through the game jam game that they're building. Cool. So this next one, sound effects. Like James said, there are a lot of really good ways to get sound effects in. I use freesound.org as well. I use it a lot for sound effects themselves. And then one of my other favorite ones is called Pixabay. Pixabay has a bunch of royalty-free like tracks that you can use. So more like background music and stuff. Like James said, sound effects go a really long way in developing a game. This game at the bottom right here is another game that I built called Mineshaft Mayhem. Um, there's a background song going on, but as well, like each character, when you swap between character selection, there's an audio cue for which character you're picking. And then there's a jump audio, there's a roll audio, and then there's audio for each element that they're picking up. So like being able to identify what's happening in the game by the audio is very helpful for a lot of people. You have your visual cues, but you also have your auditory cues that are allowing people to kind of understand what's happening. If they weren't watching the game, they could still kind of get a sense of what's happening through listening to the game. And again, those are two really good resources that I like. You just have to look at the license that's on there. Almost everything on both of these is Creative Commons Zero, which means that you don't necessarily have to um, give somebody like written rights in, or not written rights, but written acknowledgments in the game. There's some Creative Commons licenses where you have to acknowledge the creator of the asset. So you'd have like a credit session where you give them acknowledgments. I still try and include them in my write-ups, so my README documents and the stuff on the final game submission page. I always try and say where I'm getting my assets from, whether it be audio or 3D. But yeah, just look at the license type for the asset that you're getting from any of these open source asset libraries and repositories that you use. So next slide.
Alrighty, and so final element of this today is to just really quickly review what your submission should include. So when you go to ape.io/gamejams, we have a new link that we just added last week now, where you can actually submit your experience here. In that form that comes up, you are going to be required to submit two main things, which is first, your 1 minute demo video, and then secondly, making sure that you submit an eighth wall link that is a public and playable experience. George, last week during the studio workshop, showed you all how to edit your featured page and make sure that you have different elements on there to make it stand out and look as good as possible. So if you weren't able to join us last week for the workshop, I strongly recommend checking out the replay. I'll drop the link there in a second. And if you haven't signed up for the game jam, I strongly recommend doing so, because we will be doing direct email communications for everyone that is signed up. So make sure you sign up so that you don't miss out on any further communication. And then lastly, just want to remind everyone, we do have a Discord. So I've dropped the link a couple of times in the chat. If you joined a little bit late and need it, let me know. But in the Discord, we have a dedicated channel to this game jam, specifically to game jams in general. And there you will be able to ask for help, think about joining teams. Don't expect all of the conversations to happen there. I think Camilo, for example, posted that he's looking to join a team, and then DMs rose from there. And now there's a few people working together. So just put yourself out there if you're looking for teams, if you're looking to for like specific elements of your game build, definitely drop a message there, and we'll see what we can get. But that's pretty much it for today. That's all we have for you. We're going to go ahead and move over to Q&A. We have one question already in our Q&A from Dwayne, I believe. And that is, are you using any storyboards or concept sketches? Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Just that when I've been in the game design process, it begins with first a document or story, and then it goes to concept sketches. Is that what most people are doing? Yeah, or are they just kind of going in the environment and
Right.
objects without even, creating a concept sketch?
I think it's great to start kind of on paper and get down what you're planning as a whole before, and whether that starts with sketches or you prefer to go into writing and more screenplay style, stage direction and dialogue first. You can handle it that way as well. Yeah, I definitely think planning is important, and people's processes will differ, but that's a perfectly acceptable way
And
to
one
go about it.
follow-up, just to see things and get things moving or on the screen and the UI working. Are you used to putting in just simple objects like a cube or a cylinder just to see the components, in the environment and the player character, maybe a cylinder sliding around?
Yeah, I would say you saw my sample project that I made that was the um what was it? Yeah, right here. The prototype page for this Ridge game platformer that I made. It was all squares and planes and primitive objects inside of Studio that I was using to kind of test elements out. And then you can see the final product. These were all using Gaussian splats and using textures from scans that I made. So definitely, I always try and just, try and get the ideas out there and test it out because you never know if something's going to be fun until you get in there and experience it yourself. So, and I was going to add for like the storyboarding and stuff as well. Um, a term that I use a lot is like low fidelity, high fidelity, and medium fidelity prototyping. That was something I learned when I was doing UX design and stuff. So usually I'll just draw things out. I'm not an artist by any means, but like drawing out a mechanic and then creating this would be like a medium fidelity prototype on the left is what I would say that is. And then usually for a game jam, I would call that the high fidelity prototype of a final like game that eventually I would like to make. So you kind of have your low fidelity would be kind of your hand drawn out. Some people like drawing things out. I actually personally really like writing a game design document and kind of working through like the mechanics through the game design document and then prototyping the mechanics in like a vertical slice, which would be your medium fidelity, and then your final game jam would be your high fidelity for maybe a more long-term game.
Mhm. Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, James and Declan, for answering that. The next question is, should we export the game to Viverse? That is not a requirement to submit your game for this jam. As a matter of fact, if you are selected for one of the top 3 prizes in this jam, to move your experience over to Viverse, I believe the VIVERSE team will share any feedback that they have for your game before it's ready to make the move over there. And then our team internally here at Eighth Wall will help you with all the technical side of actually making sure that it exports there. So there's not a whole lot of work for you post game jam waiting for you. We will be doing our best to make sure to walk you through that process and alleviate some of that. All right, Keegan. Are there any sort of office hours for technical questions? Yes. I mentioned this at the top of the event, but we are going to be announcing next week some one-on-one slots to meet with the developer support engineers, and there you will be able to ask technical questions. However, you do have access to the forum at forum.eighthwall.com and Discord for community help. Although I strongly recommend going to the forum if there are more technical questions that you have. Next question we have here is from Siasa. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. No worries if you were late, it's totally fine. Could you show us a project that was developed for a game jam and then developers continue to project to publish it for other platforms? That's a great question. We don't actually have right now a direct example of a game that has done that. We are working with a few distribution partners currently to work on that. I know Declan is has gotten feedback for one of his games for that. But we are working on that, and we will have more examples of that in the near future. Ultimately, the goal is to not only have you all build games using Studio, but then also have an outlet to get your games out there and played by a larger general public. Many of the VIVERSE games are FPS with only clicking as interaction. Does VIVERSE prefer these kind of games? James, want to take that?
No, and I think one of the goals of this game jam is to expand the range and kind of content that's available on VIVERSE. A lot of what you see now was built with our kind of VIVERSE to Play Canvas SDK, which is another web gaming engine. But like I said, we're expanding into adding several more engines, include that can publish to VIVERSE. So yeah, we're open to a wide range of content, wider than you might even see on the platform already.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're seeing games on VIVERSE and thinking I must limit my game to the features that I'm seeing live there, that is not the case. The only limitation that you should be thinking about is what can you build in Studio versus what you can't build in Studio. If you can make it in Studio, we will make it work on the VIVERSE platform. I would like to know a little more about the process of what it is like to work with VIVERSE in case one submits a project and is chosen. I think, James, you can speak directly to that since you are an alum of the creator program and now work with the company.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a little different for this game jam. So the VIVERSE Creator Program is kind of has rolling applications to fund web gaming projects with a focus again on multiplayer, desktop, mobile, and VR cross-platform experiences. So that's available, and you can find more information about that on our website, viverse.com. So that's available anytime, and you can pitch multiple projects. If something's close but not quite there, we'll give you feedback, things like that. So that's how I got involved with the project. So this is a little bit different being the game jam, and like we're going to actually be seeing a close to finished prototype or a working demo at some point. So maybe we will have feedback, I think, a little bit like, oh, could you polish this or make sure your copy says this or something like that. But no, I think there will be minimal rework required unless you really feel motivated to continue to work on it. That would be fantastic too. So I wouldn't want to limit anyone, but the yeah, it has overall though just been a great community and really interactive and proactive people. A lot of different kinds of content, from more art pieces to more hangout rooms to fully interactive VR escape room kind of stuff. And yeah, we're just expanding the range of what's possible too. So yeah, it's exciting to see.
Thank you for that, James. We have another question, this one from the chat from Sam. I'm curious, as I'm new to VIVERSE, about its main application. Is it cross-platform prototyping, hosting? Is it a bit like UEFN Horizon, World/VR, chat public gaming experience, environment/platform? Essentially asking, what is VIVERSE?
And John, maybe you want to tackle this from a kind of top down?
Sure. So the question is just what is VIVERSE? Yeah, okay. Yeah, basically it's a WebXR distribution platform meant for people who build 3D games. Right now, we have direct integration with Play Canvas, but soon we're going to open the door to all different kinds of game engines, and the idea would be someone builds something, whether it's with AI or them just manually, and then they have to find a way to get an audience there using a trusted domain and not having to worry about the infrastructure of delivering a lot of 3D files and stuff like that. So you would publish to VIVERSE, and when you publish there, it's kind of like YouTube. You can even get an embed link and then drop it on your own site. And then we'll offer monetization systems as well. Things like IAP and ads and things like that in the future.
Awesome. So Sam's follow-up was she's trying to understand it by comparing it to other things. So what would you say is another platform in the market today that's similar?
Hmm.
And you
I'm
can
not
say,
really sure if there is one similar, but I guess it's somewhere between like YouTube for 3D or like Steam in the web, I guess.
ah, that's a great explainer. Awesome. Cool. All right, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have so far. Does anyone have anything else last minute before we wrap up for today? While you're typing, I just want to point out that there are some previous challenge slash game jam winners in this Zoom with people like Libardo, Arena, I see you as well. Beatrice is here. Let's see if I see anyone else. I think that's pretty much it. No, Jamie, you're here. Wow, welcome. Yeah, so if you are curious to work with other folks, as I've mentioned, we have our Discord. One thing I would also strongly recommend is going back to the Eighth Wall blog and seeing past winners of challenges. Get some inspiration as to what has been built. Also, there's the behind the build blogs. Those are also they're great for inspiration on what can be made in studio. But yeah, any final words of encouragement from George, Declan, James?
I'm really excited to see what everyone builds. Please share your progress in the Discord and on the forums. I love seeing what people build. And also if you need help, please just reach out for help. Like don't sit there getting stuck. Like we're all here to help you.
Yeah, have fun, try to learn something and give it your best shot. Yeah. Enjoy.
I would add, jump into the Discord because there's a lot of us that want to help there. I try and answer as many questions as I can. Um, Sometimes I can do a lot more during the week than other weeks, but definitely there are a lot of people on there that want to help. And something I'll plug, I think either next week or the week after. In the past, I've done like a 3 hour session where I just sat in Discord on the stage and kind of live programmed in front of anybody that wanted to join. I'm planning on doing that again in the next week or two. I know Beatrice was there last time and she had a lot of awesome questions, and I was probably, hopefully, able to answer some of them. So, if that sounds interesting to you, please jump on and join. And then, if there are times where it would be more accessible for you to do something like that, please get on there and let us know when that would be helpful. Just because we want to try and do it whenever there are people that are able to jump on and be in there and talk with us. So, again, I'll kind of be working on another project, not necessarily my game jam project, just so nobody steals it. Just kidding. But I'll be working on something, and I think this time I've had a lot of people asking me where do I start with a project and how do I start designing kind of the files and the scripts and thinking about a project from the start on Studio. So I think that's where I'm going to kind of try and run this session is how do I start designing the engineering and scripting of everything and coming up with how to make the different components for the assets and entities. So, yeah, please jump in and join us. It'd be awesome to have you there.